Angular 2 HTTP REST operations and observables. So in this presentation, we are going to learn how we can make REST calls to remote services. So first, we are going to learn how we can set up a sample REST server, and we're going to actually use what is called the JSON server node package to start a local REST server. And then we are going to see how asynchronous response handling can be done in Angular 2. And we are going to see how we can use Angular 2 provided HTTP service. And we also talked about the already observable operators. We talked about the observables, right? But we're going to also talk about what is called the observable operators. Okay, and then we are going to perform CRUD operations against the server, getting an item, posting an item. So posting is basically adding a new item to the server, deleting an item, and we are going to also see how we can getting the list of items, and we also see how we can handle errors on observable. So let's see how we can set up the local REST server, as well as that is what is called the Firebase. So we are going to see on both. Okay, so we're going to actually work with local REST server. So there is what is called the JSON server package. So we want to install that JSON server package by saying npm install g -g JSON server. Okay, so basically what you are going to say is npm install -g global installation and JSON server, like this. Okay, and we are going to create a test data file. We're going to call it db.json. Okay, and then we are going to create the users data. Okay, then we're going to run local server, and then we have a fully functioning the REST server. Okay, so let's I'm going to create, might as well just, yes, so why don't I actually create yeah, we could actually create right here as well. So I'm going to create the on the HTTP create db.json. Okay, and then you are going to we are going to create JSON object. So it's going to be JSON object, and then the name of the database is going to be users, and then it's going to be just array of users, and basically you're going to have multiple users. So ID is ID1, and name property you give Sang, and age, and whatever number, 34, and we are going to create a multiple of this. Okay, so I'm going to just copy this guy for this, and ID2, ID3, ID4, and just give a different name, John, Mary, and whatever, and age 11, 344, and just 4. Okay, and all right, so now we have a data file. Okay, just save it, and now all you have to do is JSON server, and then you specify the name of the JSON file. Okay, like a db.json. So that's what I created here. So you say JSON server db.json. Now we have a fully functioning REST server. So now you should be able to access this data. So we are going to actually use our the browser. So let's go to HTTP localhost 3000, and if you say users, you should actually see these 4 users that we just created. And if you want to see the first user, you specify ID. So this will actually create the first user. And if you want to see a third user, you say 3. Okay. In the browser, I cannot really, perform the post operation. That's something we're going to actually do. I could use the curl command, but this is a fully functioning REST server. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes for you guys to install JSON server, create a DB.json file, and then run the server, and then just make sure that server is up and running with the data. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes. Let's continue. So another server that you can use is from Firebase. This is basically online NoSQL server that you can use for free. For at least for testing purpose. So you can go to www.firebase.com. So let me actually demonstrate that. We're not going to actually use this guy. Let's see, firebase.com. Okay, so here. Click see our new website. Yeah, okay, so you probably have to actually login. You have to create the login, and I already have account, so I can go to console here, and then I can already have a Firebase using so basically you can create a brand new project. So select the database here, select the database, and then you can expand data, real-time database, go. Okay, so these are the things I created before. Okay, so you can actually create a new, the user. You can click this guy, and then you can create the the key value pairs, test value, and things like that. Okay, and then you can actually access this guy using like this test. So this is the URL. So you URL, then let's go over here, and I think you have to actually specify the you have to specify JSON. Test. This is the URL. Save link, and oops, not that one. Actually, I forgot the test. And let's see. So I'm gonna say users JSON, something like that. So you get the users in the form of JSON. Okay, so this is another test server that you can use for your REST operation. Okay, but we're gonna actually use this local REST server for our exercises. Okay, so moving forward, async response handling in Angular 2. So Angular 2 uses reactive extensions of JavaScript called the RxJS library for asynchronous operations. So RxJS reactive programming library provides event-driven stream of notifications to a caller by issuing observable return type. So we have learned how to subscribe observable in our previous presentation, right? Okay. So the caller performs subscribe method against the returned observable object, passing data handler and error handler as arguments. So these are function object, callback function object that you pass as an argument, and the data handler will be invoked when the data is received later on. So why do we care about this in HTTP? The reason is because the REST methods of Angular provided HTTP service return observable as a return type. Okay, so you have to use observable in order to perform HTTP operations using Angular 2 provided HTTP service. Okay, so let's learn Angular 2 provided HTTP service. So this is a built-in service that Angular provides in HTTP module. So the built-in HTTP service supports these methods: get, post, put, delete, head, and patch. And all these methods return observable of response type. Okay. So once you get the observable response type, then you're going to call subscribe method, passing again data handler, error handler, or completion handler. Okay, data handler is of course most important, and that is a mandatory argument. Error handler or completion handlers are optional arguments. Okay, so let's move on how we can perform get operation to get an item. Okay, so this is the lab, the first lab. So we are going to create intermediary service called the REST service, because we do not actually call HTTP thing inside component, right? We won't hide our HTTP. We won't actually hide component. Well, let me actually phrase it. We won't insulate our component from knowing exactly the schemes that is using underneath to get the data. Okay, so we want to use a REST service, which is an intermediary service that the component uses. Inside the REST service, it will actually use Angular 2 HTTP service. Okay, so we are going to create this intermediary service called the REST. Okay, so we are gonna go to third. So ngg service, and we are gonna call REST. So it will create REST service. Okay, so in here in the REST service, we are going to inject HTTP. So this is the REST service. We need to inject HTTP service. So we're going to actually have here private and HTTP, and the type is HTTP, and we need to import the HTTP. Okay, and now we have a HTTP, the service object injected. Okay, now we are going to provide maybe get item method. Okay, and we probably want to receive an ID. So ID, and here, and then we are going to actually use this HTTP, and then we are going to we are going to use the get method. Okay, get, and here get method just take the URL and then optional arguments. Okay, so only thing that we need to provide is URL. The URL is gonna be localhost, that the 3000. So I'm gonna actually have a constant, and the remote URL, and then it's going to be HTTP localhost 3000 and users, and you might as well have the slash at the end. Okay, and oh, class cannot have, yeah, so it's just the property. Yeah, okay, so we have remote URL property with these values. Okay, and so we're gonna get, and then we provide this remote URL. Okay, now as you are going to see, it's actually, this is the type of observable. Okay, so if you actually see this guy, you can see it's returning observable. So let me just show you here. You see in the pop-up window here, you can see HTTP get method. The return type is observable of response. Okay, so in order to get the data, we need to actually call subscribe method. So we are going to call subscribe method. Okay, and we can actually now provide, three different three handlers. One is the data handler, the second one is the error handler, third one is a completion handler. We don't actually specify error and completion handler at this point. We just need to specify the data handler, okay, because that is the only mandatory handler. Okay, so we're going to actually receive response, and that response is the type of response. Okay, and then for now we're gonna actually just console log response like this. Okay, and we need to import. Okay, so now, oh, so why is actually having remote URL? Why is that? Cannot find remote URL. Oh, so I have to say, yeah, this. Okay, yeah. So the okay, so basically this is what happened. So now let's actually see, so this is the REST service. So in our in our app component, here, so I want to actually create another component instead of using app component. So ngg component. Let's see, I'm gonna just use hello. Okay, hello component. So hello component will now, so I want to actually add hello component into app HTML here. So we are going to just have the app hello. Okay, all right, so now we are going to go hello component here, and we need to inject REST service. So we're gonna say private and REST service, and we are going to say REST service and import. Okay, now any service object you have to actually declare. If you remember, we have to actually declare here REST service, REST service. Okay, import. Okay, all right. So now in the hello component, what we want to do is, we want to perform get item. So get item, and this method will receive again ID, and this will use now the REST service. So this REST service, then we're gonna call get item of its own and just passing ID. Okay, so if you call this guy, if you take a look at the REST service, it calls this guy, and then it calls the get method, and when the data is received, all it does is just display the data in the console. Okay, all right, so now hello component TS, we need to have a way of passing this ID to get items. So in hello component HTML file, we are going to so let's say this one is h4, and get item. Okay, so this is a user, so get a user. All right, and here we're gonna have input, and here we are going to pass some value. So we're gonna say my input, and we're gonna have a button click, and here we're gonna say get item, and we're gonna pass my input value. Okay, and get a user. Okay, so if everything worked fine, then we should have input field where we can just type 1. That will call the get item method of hello component, which will use REST service. It will call get item method of the REST service, and the REST service will actually use the internal. So REST service is it will use HTTP services get method, and when the data is received, then we are going to just display in the console. Okay, so let's see whether this one works. Okay, we save it, and now go to 4200. All right, so good. So let's open the developer tool here. Okay, so if I type 1 get a user, okay, good. So we have received response object, which contains a body and the state is 200, and you can see inside the body contains the actual user ID 1, name Sang, age whatever. Okay, so it seems like it's working fine. Okay, now what we want to do is, instead of actually getting the response object, we need to get the data inside the body, right? In order to do that, you can actually call JSON method. Okay, so response JSON, like this. Okay, so if you take a look at the response, the class, you can see there is in fact a JSON method. That JSON method, yeah, so this is the description. Attempts to return body as parsed JSON object or raise an exception. Okay, so when we do call JSON method, we're gonna actually see the body part of it rather than the whole response object. Okay, so this time we're gonna actually say to get a user. Now you can see it actually it returns an array of users. That's interesting. Because it's actually saying users, right? What we have to do is we have to actually provide here ID. Yeah, we forgot to actually pass the ID here, so we need to have ID like this. Okay, so let's save it. Okay, all right, so there's to get a user. Now you can see it returns a body of that response, which contains 2, name is John, age 11. So if I select 3, then it should actually return third person, 3, name Mary, and age 344. Okay, so that is basically I want you to do at this point. Okay, and we're gonna actually try observable in the following exercise. I'll give you about 10 minutes to do this lab. Okay, so what we want to at this point is right now we are just displaying the console, right? But we want to receive this data and display on the browser. Okay, so in that case, what we need to do is we need to have the hello component here. We need to have some kind of property here. Receive user, so we're going to just say user. By the way, in this case, it's a good idea to have user object. Okay, so so I'm going to have maybe user type like this. So we're going to create the user class. Okay, so I'm going to create the user class right here, new file, user.ts, and it's going to be export class user, and it will have ID, which is a number, and then the number, and the name was a name, and the string, and age is number. Okay, so we have a user class, and now we're gonna taking advantage of user, and we need to import this guy. So user is imported, and what we want to do is we want to display this user in the hello component template. So here we are probably say like a user.name. Okay, so when the user is retrieved, we like to actually display user. Okay, now in order to do that, basically we need to actually perform subscribe operation here rather than REST service itself. Okay, so here instead of REST service, what we want to do is we want to return the result of calling get that is observable, and then this subscriber will be performed inside the hello component. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to extract this guy, and in the hello component, we are going to actually receive the observable by calling this guy, and then we are going to use it here. Okay, so what it means is that this method should just return. So go to here. Now this one should just yeah, this one, we don't need this guy. And we are going to just say return. And basically this is going to return observable. Observable. And that is going to be response, something like this. Okay. The import. Okay. So the get item is going to call get method, and return of that is going to be observable type. Okay. So in our hello component, is going to receive that observable object. Then it's going to perform the subscribe operation, and then in this case we are going to it's going to actually pass. Yeah, we need the one more parenthesis. What is the okay, here we go. We are going to receive response object, and then we are going to display at this point. Okay, so it should work exactly the same. For now we are displaying it, but we are doing it inside the hello component rather than REST service. So let's make sure that one works first of all. Oops, we got a problem. So let's see, hello component inline template caused by cannot read property name over undefined. Okay, so the what is it? Oh, okay, so we don't have any, so this one is not defined at all, right? So yeah, so we might as well actually change this guy to yeah. For now, let's not do this. So in HTML, let's just comment this guy up for now because we didn't set that guy yet. Okay. All right, so now we should actually behave, it should actually behave at least the same. So now if I type 2 get user, you should have this console. Okay. All right, so that's not that much exciting. So now we are going to display the data on the browser, which means here instead of on console, we are going to so the this response JSON object is in fact, that is the user object, right? So what you can do is we can say this user is going to be JSON, I'm sorry, the response JSON. Okay, so that response JSON is going to be user object, and that is going to be assigned to user. Okay, yeah, looks like we still miss oh, we have one more. Okay, yeah. So now then we should be able to display user, and then we are going to uncomment this guy. Now we should, yeah, so we are going to just say receive user received. Okay, so let's see whether this one works. Okay, so we are going to type, oops, let's see, cannot read property name of the undefined. We still have actually undefined things. So this is the user, and in component here we have a user, and so subscribe response, and then we have response JSON. So this user should be actually captured as username, and yeah, so that Y is actually so for now let's actually create the some user object, some kind of dummy object. Okay. Oh, you know what? Yeah. So yeah. What happens is the what happens is that the even before this is called, it was actually trying to display. It's trying to actually display this message. That's why. All right. So we're gonna actually provide some kind of dummy user object. So here we're gonna provide one dummy, and age is 34 or something like that. ID equals 1, name equals dummy, and age. Yeah, so we just provide some dummy object so that it doesn't actually crash with the undefined. All right, so let's do that. And okay, so loading it. Okay, so now it's received dummy, but now it actually, if I say 2 get a user, now you can see it's receiving John. If I say 3, then it should actually receive Mary. If I type 1, that should be Sang. Okay, so that worked fine. So I'm gonna let you guys do this part. I'll give you 5 minutes to do this part. Okay, so basically what I want you to do is, the REST service is just return that observable object. Okay, and it is hello component that performs the subscribe, and when the data is received, we are basically having that receive the object to be assigned to user object, okay, which is user type of ID, name, and age. Okay, so I'll give you 5 minutes to finish this part. Next, we are going to learn the concept of observable operators. So observable operators can be applied to items emitted by an observable. Each operator in turn returns observable, so these operators can be in fact chained. So each operator in the chain modifies the observable that result from the operation of previous operator. In order to use them, you need to import rx.js rx. We're going to use only one operator called the map. Map operator is most useful. It transforms the items emitted by observable by applying function to each of them. There are in fact a lot of observable operators available, but we're going to just use a map. Okay. So what we want to do is basically we know that we have to call JSON method of the response object to get the body of to get the JSON representation of the body of the response, right? Okay, so instead of actually we do at here in the hello component, at least calling JSON could be done in the REST service. Okay, so here we can actually call it returns observable. Then we can call map, and here we are going to take and let me show you the response object, response, and then we are going to actually map is going to be response JSON. Okay, and then we need to import. Yeah, this one control I doesn't seem to be working, so I need to manually add it here. So it's going to be import and rx jx rx like this. Okay, all right. So so basically the mapping of the response to this format is done inside the REST. Okay, what that means is now in the in our hello component, I don't have to perform these JSON things myself. Okay, so in fact it will return, it's not going to be response type anymore. Okay, it's going to be, yeah, so I don't, I can just say any, and I could be any, and then I don't really need to call JSON because it's already done in the REST service. Okay, all right, so this one should work exactly the same. So let me just save the change, and the behavior should be exactly the same. So let me just make sure it is updated. And again, if I type 1, then get a user, it receives Sang. If I type 2, then receive John. So it still works fine. Okay, good. So we basically use the map operator to perform the mapping in the REST service. Okay, so that is the lab. I'm going to actually continue all the presentation because I like to actually make sure I do the recordings, and then I'll give you guys time to do the lab. Okay, so we have done getting an item. Now the next we are going to actually post an item, meaning we are going to add an item to the user. I mean, we are going to actually add a new user to the users list. Okay, so basically we are going to use the post method. Okay, so in the REST service, we are going to have so instead of get item, it should be get user. So this time I'm gonna use the post user, and it should actually receive the data of user object, right? So it would probably user object, okay? And then we are gonna use this HTTP service, and then we are going to use this time post. Okay, now post, you specify the URL, and then you provide the data. That is a body that is required. Okay, so post, so here we are going to actually provide this guy, right? Yeah, we have to import the user class. Oops. Let's see why it doesn't. Yeah, so it it didn't. Oh, so user class is actually under hello. Yeah, so we might as well just take this guy out under apps. Okay. So I might probably have to import and from dot user and user. Okay, so I have to manually add it, and I think in the hello component I probably, yeah, so this one has to be let me see whether okay. All right, so that should work fine. So now in the REST service, we are going to have a user, and so in this URL, and then we have to actually provide user object. Okay, and again we want to perform the mapping of that map, and yeah, so I'm going to just copy the whole thing here and return. Okay, so it will perform the post operation, and it will return observable. When the data is received, it will convert into oh, what is this? This is the REST service. Oh, this is not right. So what we want is the response. This is the this is REST service. Yeah, so REST service, this is actually response and response.json. Okay, and in the hello here, yeah, so it seems like I was wrong here, so I placed the wrong place. So this one should be any, and then I don't have to actually do response like this. Okay, okay, so now we have a REST, the service has a post user, okay, which is going to actually post the user, and so in the hello component, so we're gonna actually so we're gonna have a method called post user, and here we might actually take the ID and name and age, and then we're gonna actually create a user object. So let user create a new the user ID, name, and age. Okay, like this. Yeah, we need to actually have a constructor in the user class. Okay, so that's the reason it's complaining about it. So we go to user and we provide a constructor, and it's receiving ID and the name and age, and basically all we do is this ID is assigned with ID, and this name is assigned with name, and this age is assigned with age, like this. Okay, so we have a constructor, and so we are going to create the new user, and basically we are going to call this REST service, and then we are going to call post user, and then we provide user object, like this. Okay, so it will actually, let's actually see whether this one works. Oh yeah, of course, you know, we need to actually have UI. So in hello component, we need to have a way of passing ID and the name and age. Okay, so h4, this is post new user, and we're gonna have a 3 input field. That is going to be that is going to be you know, we'll have a local template reference, my input 1, and my input 1 input, yeah, I should have actually a form, but why don't I actually take the simple route? So we're gonna actually create some kind of dummy, you know, we'll just have a button, and button click, and you know, basically post new user, and you know, we're gonna actually create the dummy user for now, post user. So we're gonna create the post new user in here. Yeah, so for now, you know, instead of actually doing this guy, also post user, so I'm gonna just use a post user for now, post user, and instead of actually passing these values, yeah, why don't you do the things, right things? Okay, yeah, I want to actually take the shortcut, but let's do it right. So input why it doesn't. Okay, so here my input 1, and then we have another input. So let's just save this guy. So this one is input 2, this is input 3, and this is going to be my input 1 dot value, that's an ID, and then my input 2 dot value, that is the name, then my input 3 dot value, that is going to be age. Okay, and so those 3 values will be passed as the value for creating a new user. Okay, so post user, so that's good. So let's go to here. So post user receive it, and then okay, so looks like things are all set. So let's see whether this one works. So we save the change, and let's see whether things are not bombing out. Okay, so here I'm gonna say ID 5, and the name is Plum, and age is 66. Okay, and then we post the user, and now let's see whether it worked fine. So you know, we're gonna actually try to go to HTTP localhost 3000. If it has been added, then we should be able to actually see the oh, it didn't work. So you know, if it worked fine, it should actually display it. Looks like it didn't work. So let's see what is going on. So we have add this one, new user is created, and then we call the REST service. Oh, we didn't actually call the post. Yeah, subscribe, of course. Okay, so here we are going to, oh, so in this case subscriber is probably not needed, but yeah, so here subscribe, and again response any, and then we're gonna say this in this case, this is probably okay. So this user response. Okay. Okay. All right. So post user, we create a new user. We call the post user, and so let's actually take a look at the post user. Receive the user object, and so we use this URL, and then you pass the user object, then response and JSON. Yeah, that looks good to me. So let's see why it's not the yeah, definitely didn't actually create a new user. So let's see, we go to this one still should work at a user. Yeah, and post new user. So 5 whatever and 66 post to user. Now let's actually see whether, oh, now it worked. Okay, good. So now we have added. All right. Okay, good. So that worked. All right. So that is the post user. Now you could certainly also provide another header. So you could actually have a headers object, new headers. You can specify the accept header as an application JSON, and then you can specify headers. Okay, but in our case, it's not really needed. So we can actually just move on. Now we are going to get the list of items. In this case, we are going to have a list of users. So we are going to provide in the REST service. So here, get all users. Okay. So here we are going to again return, and this HTTP, and again it's going to be get, and this time the URL is going to be just remote URL instead of the remote URL and ID. Okay. And then this is going to be the same. Okay. All right. Okay. And okay, so that is get users. So in our hello component, we are going to have our own version of get all users, and like this. And so basically, we are going to call this REST service and get all users. Oops, get all users, and here, and then we also subscribe, and again the logic is pretty much the same. In this case, it's gonna be response any. Now it's supposed to be, this time is an array, right? So we are gonna say this users, and then it's gonna be response. Okay, so now we need to have a users array. So that should be users, and that should be array of users. So user array, and we're gonna just initialize with this. Okay, all right. So now get all users should receive all these things as a response. Okay, so now what we want to do is in the hello component HTML. So now we want to have get all users, and basically all we need is we're gonna have unordered list, li, and then we're gonna use the ng4 and user, and that should be users, and here user, yeah, we can just use a username. Okay, so we're gonna just display the username, right? Okay, so let's see whether oh, so we also have to have a button, right? So let's say a button here, and get all users. So get all users. So when this button is clicked, it's gonna call get all users method, and which in turn calls the REST service to call it, and then return value will be set into users. So we are actually performing ng4 for that. All right, so good. So we save the change, and now we are going to have get all users. Okay, so if everything worked fine, then we are seeing all users. Okay, so if I add another user, so let's say I'm gonna post 66 and the JPassion and come post user. Now if I get all users, now we see that users as well. Okay, so that is for getting all users. Now the last one we want to do is delete the user. So delete the user is pretty straightforward, right? So we go to REST service and we are going to say delete user, and again it should receive an ID, and it's pretty much the same with get item here. Okay, so here I'm gonna just have here, instead of get, it's going to delete. Okay, and everything is the same. Okay, so in hello world here we're gonna have again delete. So that should be actually pretty much the same as this guy. So I'm gonna just copy this code and here delete. Yeah, so I should say delete user and take an ID, and so it should be delete user, and then rest of it is pretty much the same. Yeah, so in this case it should not return any user object. Okay, so maybe I can just ignore it. So we're gonna just say console log deleted, something like that. Okay, and then in template we are going to have for delete a user, and we are going to actually have an ID of this guy, same thing as this, right? So here, and delete user, and my input 6 and my input 6, and delete. Okay, so we save the change, and let's see. Oops. So let's see what is going on. HT, yeah, looks like I have a misspelled. Yeah, so it's the H4. Okay. Yeah, computer is honest. Too honest. Okay, so now let's make sure that we got all these users, and now we're gonna delete Sang, the first one. So one, delete the user, and then get all users. Now you can see the Sang is deleted. Okay, if I delete the Mary, that Mary is 012, so I type 2, delete the user, get all users, and that user is deleted. Okay, so that is how things work. So basically the presentation is get list of items. Okay, and this one is yeah, if you're using Firebase, this is the logic that you want to use. Since we are not using Firebase, we are just using JSON server, things are a little bit more straightforward. Get list of items and delete an item. If you're using Firebase REST server, or if you're using local REST server, this is pretty much all you have to do. Okay. Now error handling. So in our subscribe case, so let's actually basically get user case. So we can actually deal with the get user case. So when so let me actually demonstrate the problem here. So if I say 1 valid user, then things are the user is gone. So I'm gonna just use a 3 get user. Okay, so that's fine. Oh, okay, so when I actually use 1, right, so this is the errors, and or 100, there is no user with that ID, right? So you got the same exception, and it's cutting 4, right? So the reason is because this exception is okay, but we need to catch this error, right? We don't want actually this kind of error to be uncut like this. So in our subscriber method, so get user here, get item here, we want to also provide error handler as a second argument. So here we're gonna say error, and basically here we're gonna just console log an error. Okay, so we are catching an error if there is a problem. Okay, so let's save the change. Okay, so this time, yeah, so instead of this uncaught error, we are going to actually see, let's say 100 and get an error. You can see it actually caught the response of 44, and then basically yeah, so this is the it is actually, it catches the error and just display that the the error message. So if I want to see JSON version of it, that's probably a bit more readable. Okay, so let's see, 100. Okay, yeah, so okay, so the error message doesn't really contain any body, so that's the reason it doesn't say anything. So just to show, the error can be caught and it is recommended, okay, to catch any errors. So that is basically okay, yeah, so this is actually better. So this error message, an error, and we display, so what, that's probably better. So I'm gonna actually have the error message. So we're gonna actually display this message for the users to see. And here we are going to and this error message and error like this. Okay, okay, all right, so save the change, and then we are going to try again 44. So 100 get an error, and I need to actually have this error message to be displayed here. So here, and error message. Okay, yeah, typically we want to use ng if to make sure that this is displayed only when there is an error. Okay, all right, okay, so again 88 get a user, and now we got the error message for not found and blah blah blah. Okay, so that is error handling in subscribe method. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation. We got 4 minutes. Let's see, let me just make sure I